Hello, Science and Magic. Welcome in. I am Amanda Helen, and this is my channel. I love to approach my life with a little bit of science, a little bit of the mystery, the magic, and everything in between. So I like to talk about things like feminine embodiment. I love to talk about working deliciously and also nervous system care. I studied neuroscience in college, neuroscience and dance. So I like to bring that expertise to my approach to all of my work. Today, we're going to be talking about triggers and how triggers can contribute to aging. Now, right away, I just want to kind of nip in the bud that aging is not a bad thing. Like, I think we have a very strong anti-aging culture, especially in the Western world. And that can be overwhelming as the years go by. And the key here is like, are we aging in vitality or are we aging in exhaustion? Are we aging in radiance or are we aging in dullness? Are we aging in brittleness or in mobility and fluidity? Are we aging in alignment with our feminine expression, or are we aging more in alignment with the masculine, especially if we identify as having more of a feminine core? So this video will kind of address how triggers and the chronic activation of stress in the body will result in aging in a way that creates exhaustion, dullness, brittleness, and more of a masculine expression in the body. I think aging is a beautiful thing. I think it's an honor. Every year that goes by is a year that we get to experience this beautiful body that we're in. But especially if we identify as feminine essence beings, we want to most likely age in radiance and age in accordance with our feminine energy. Hi, Amber. Welcome in. Solfuela says, looking forward to this live. I have CPTSD and get triggered daily, even though I've been healing for years. Oh, my love. Recently began with yin yoga because of you. I'm so glad. I hope that's going well for you. A really helpful thing when talking about triggers is to slow the nervous system down. That's something I learned about in craniosacral school. As I get excited when I talk, I generally get into a flow and I'll start to speak faster. But throughout this live, one of my intentions would be to slow down so we can absorb. And yin yoga helps to slow everything down because you're holding these poses for very long periods of time, like several minutes. You're not just blazing through them, you're consciously bringing your attention in, moving slow motion. It can be really helpful with healing when given the most nourishing environment and the safest environment possible. So feel free to say hi. You can interact in the chat as we go. You can ask questions. I'll periodically take breaks and see what's going on over there. You all know I love hearing from you. So actually, before we talk about triggers, I do want to remind you that my new course, Lighten Up, it will be launching in March. It will be hosted live. So there will be live group calls with me, and it's going to be all about this. So how do we release activation in the nervous system, release stored trauma, bitterness, resentment, and we're going to address the physical body, the emotional body, the energetic body, and the nervous system. So each week we'll be moving through one of those categories. And early bird pricing goes through this Sunday, February 4th. It's my birthday. Also, the numbers are 2424. So I feel like it's such a magical year. And I've had such an incredible year with the start of my family and the growth of my business that I just wanted to gift this. All of my courses are also 50% off through my birthday. So you can use the code OVERFLOW to purchase the courses. This includes my yin yoga course. It includes Nervous System of a Goddess, level 1 and level 2. Those courses are 50% off, and Lighten Up is pinned at the very top of this chat, and that's early bird pricing. The pricing will raise as of Monday, February 5th. And if you're listening to this after, all of these dates, then even past March, Lighten Up will be recorded and evergreen. So the link will still be good and you can still purchase it. So I'm very excited to offer this and to connect with all of you. We have a live call for Nervous System of a Goddess Soften this coming Thursday. So I'll get to meet everyone who's been registering. Okay, so what is a trigger? A trigger is something that activates the nervous system. And I was kind of looking it up because you all know I love to do that. But they're basically caused by an incident that has happened in the past, like they can be. So it's something that sets you off, that reminds you of something from the past. So a person can trigger you, experience can trigger you, something can trigger you to remember something traumatic. Triggers can be capital T trigger, like I feel like my life is in danger and this person's so annoying. And when it's more of the lowercase t triggers, that's mostly what we're going to talk about today because I think we have a lot of choice in that matter. With the capital T triggers, I believe that getting support from a professional, from a community can be really important in holding the nervous system. I find that with capital T triggers that you need another safe nervous system to co-regulate with in response to stimuli. But these more lowercase triggers where we get easily annoyed, easily bugged, easily irritated, these things can have a lot to do with mindset and evoking consciousness and presence. So I'm curious if you're tuned in, what triggers you? It could be capital T if you want to share, or it could be more of the lower T triggers. What are things that just set you off, that irritate you? It's like, for me, for example, I get a little annoyed, not super annoyed, but I can feel my nervous system start to get irritated when someone is tailing me on the road, especially if I have my baby in the car and I'm just going at a normal speed and I'm in the right lane and they're just on my butt. That lowercase t triggers me. And I can start to feel my nervous system activate. So nervous system activation, we're going to talk about what that is. We have two branches of the nervous system. One branch is called the sympathetic nervous system, and one is the parasympathetic. So sympathetic nervous system, sympathetic is the one that activates the body, that mobilizes energy, that gives us superhuman powers to face a threat, that gives us the energy to go forage food. And then parasympathetic is the rest and digest. This is the part of the nervous system that restores the body, that rejuvenates the body, that rebuilds tissue, that digests food. And throughout the day, these branches of the nervous system are interacting with each other, and various levels of expression from each are what create a balance in the body. I feel that the sympathetic response has been kind of demonized in society, um, like in stress in general. I like to reframe what stress is, that it's not bad, that it actually unleashes energy for us to feel alive and to move forward and to go do the thing. The issue is that we live, and I guess I'll say I live because I also know that I have followers from all over the world in the United States, and there's a hyper focus and attention and obsession with activation and going and doing the thing and working and stress, to be honest, both externally and internally. So we have a chronic activated state of the nervous system. And this will deplete the body, deplete the radiance over time if it's not brought to consciousness and not worked within. This is where a lot of my work comes in with clients. Even if clients come to me with a business idea, and I love to help bring manifestations to life, but I always bring the nervous system into it. Are you moving slowly? Are you in a chronic state of survival? So when the sympathetic nervous system is activated and never really has a break, that's chronic stress. That's also what you hear refer to as survival mode. Amber says, I feel triggered when I feel pressured by time or when I'm around negativity. I feel my body not feeling at ease. I start feeling tense and I want to get away. Beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. Now, one of the key things that you said is I start feeling tense. One of the things that you can do right away when you notice nervous system activation is bring it into the body. So feel the signs, bring consciousness around what's going on. You want to get out of this, gets you out of the head. Remember, what's going on in the head, the mental plane is very masculine. What's going on in the body has a very feminine energy to it. So right away, you're bringing that attention into the body and you're saying, I'm tense. I can feel my system want to run. These are activations. This is a trigger. So different sensations that go along with the sympathetic response would be muscle tension. So you could think of the jaw biting down, the shoulders pulling up to the ears, tension in the hips. If you think of that really, that spot in the front of the hips, that's often activated because that will help us to run or to fight. The limbs get a ton of energy flooded from the heart. So the heart rate will start to increase. The blood vessels will constrict and the blood is pumped to the limbs, to the extremities to give you that superhuman power. So this is why heart rate increases. This is why breath shortens. So belly breathing, bringing the breath into the belly can help to soothe the system, stimulate something called the vagus nerve, and calm the whole body. Other signs would be racing thoughts. So when we're stressed out, we get, again, superhuman strength and we get superhuman clarity, but this clarity is really hyper-focused in small portions. You're not seeing the full picture. You are narrowed in. You can think of a lion sitting in a field, and when they're at rest, they're very wide focused. They're seeing the full picture. They're very at ease. And when they see their prey, their stress response is activated, they zone in and they become hyper focused on one thing. So when you're activated, you become hyper focused on like one thing at a time, but really clear in that thing. Thoughts increase, they speed up. So that's where that racing mind comes in. Whereas the parasympathetic expression, when you lay down and you're like, oh, I'm at the end of the day, and you feel your stomach start to gurgle. So that's, okay, my digestive system is online. I'm starting to digest food because we're not going to digest food when we're running towards something or from something, or when we're hyper focused on the external environment. That's a big difference too. Sympathetic is hyper focused on the external world, on linear thinking and strategizing for the future. Parasympathetic is more focused on this moment, internal. Also, energy is brought back to repair certain tissues in the body. So if you stress your muscles, parasympathetic would be rebuilding the muscles, lowering the heart rate, things like that. The parasympathetic response is really important for you to get an optimal sympathetic response. Let me know if you're following me. I'm sharing a good amount of science in this video. We are science and magic. Kristen, Moonrise Astrology. Hello, I agree. And when I'm overwhelmed. Hi, welcome in. Okay, what do we know about this? So first of all, like I said, stress isn't bad. Let's just take a moment and think, oh my gosh, this is amazing. When I need to go and forage food, and keep in mind, these nervous systems of ours developed in a very different world than we live in now. So there's a bit of a mismatch. But when I need to get up and go forage food or go hunt, or when I need to run from something, I get this incredible superhuman strength that allows me to do it. And I don't even have to summon it. It just happens. Wow. So reframe stress. It's not a bad thing. When you're triggered, notice what's going on and say, okay, hello, tension. Hello, nervous system. You want to move. You want to be mobilized. Okay, that's information. And then throughout this course in Lighten Up, we're going to talk about more things that you can do. But for now, I just invite you to take the judgment out of it and just notice it for what it is. Take the story out of it. I always, in my videos and on my channel, encourage you all to take the story out of the emotion and feel the emotion and sensation. Same thing with activation, trigger, stress. Just feel it as sensation. And where was I going with that? I lost my train of thought. So when I feel triggered, I should go into my body. Yes, in that moment, you go into your body and you say hello. And that creates consciousness in the moment so that you're not wrapped up in the trigger itself. You separate yourself because, in my opinion, we're both these nervous systems. We're both this ancient animal body, and we're spirit and we're consciousness. So step one in this is separating the two. And what this does is it turns on a part of the brain called the frontal lobe. And this is right behind the forehead. And what that does is it creates higher level thinking. So I'm not going to say or do this now because it's going to influence me in this way later. It is where the part of our personality lives, like who we are in relationship to the world. And so when you're able to separate yourself from these triggers and observe yourself, you're turning on the frontal lobe. When you're stressed out, the limbic system, the base of the skull, so I'm putting my hand right at the bottom of my head where my neck meets my head, that part is activated. And that's where we're just reacting. We're not doing anything. So I'm kind of getting on a tangent about what's going on. I do want to talk about why it's aging us and why our triggers and chronic activation is resulting in exhaustion and dullness, in brittleness of the body, and in the expression of masculine energy. When you think of the sympathetic expression, it is forward moving, it is strength, it is power, it is agility. It's a lot of energy forward to do something, to reach a goal, to go hunt the thing, to run away from the thing, all masculine energy. So the parasympathetic response is more around feminine resting, restoring, rejuvenating, softening, yielding, all the things you can practice in yin yoga. Sympathetic expression of the body, the fight or flight, survival mode. First takeaway, it takes a lot of energy. It takes so much energy. Like sugar and fat stores are released to give you extra energy. And if you're chronically in that state, you start to reach depletion. Your vital life force is drained. It takes away from the part of us that needs to be restored and to repair and to rejuvenate. And over time, if we're triggered and don't come out of that trigger, and triggered and don't come out of that trigger, and triggered, and our baseline is that of chronic activation, we are going to be pulling from energy stores that don't exist, and we will become depleted. And when feminine energy is about radiance and life, literally, feminine energy is like an oasis in the desert. It's the expression of life. It is a waterfall. It's hydration. It's delicious and full and juicy like a fruit. But if we're depleting ourselves over and over and over again over time, we become dry and brittle and low energy and not expressing that feminine, rejuvenative, refreshing presence. That's the first takeaway, that chronic sympathetic expression when you're triggered. And when you're capital T triggered, this is something that therapy can be really good for. Honestly, EMDR, I'm going to shout it from the rooftops. I've been doing so much of that lately as a new mom, and memories from my, 0 to 3 time period have been coming up in my subconscious. I have been doing so much EMDR and it's completely rewiring. So love that. Somatic experiencing, you can work with a trauma sensitive yoga therapist. There's so many options, but moving it through the body for the capital T trauma, the lowercase t trauma, or not trauma, triggers, that stuff you want to, so let's say someone says something and it just irritates you. It just bugs you. Okay, first step, bring it into the body. What does it feel like to be bugged? Oh, interesting. I feel my jaw tighten and my eyes move into little slits. I feel my forehead crease or wrinkle in. So then you're bringing it back to you, and then you can create an option or a choice to do something different. Okay, well, actually, I want to release my shoulders. I'm going to unhinge my jaw. I'm going to deepen my breath. I'm not going to let this get to me, right? Sometimes you can talk your way out of it, sometimes you can't. The other thing is that sympathetic activation, it hardens and braces the body because of the tone of the muscles that's brought up to meet the stressor, to meet the trigger. Thus, it creates stagnation in our feminine flow and fluidity. When thinking of that mobility, of the juiciness of the joints, of the ability to seamlessly move from one movement to the other, to walk in a way that's rhythmic and sensual, all of these things over time start to become brittle and hardened, and you can see its subtlety. I spoke about this in my last video about feminine lightness, which is different than light feminine energy. I've linked that video in the description of this one if you want to refer to it. But I talk about how I can and I have training in this from my education at the Dr. Ida Rolf Institute. I'm trained in structural integration, but I can feel into the age somewhat, right? I don't know because I'm not asking these people how old they are, but I can feel into the age of women by how they move and how they stand. And a lot of this has to do with the mobility being that brittleness, that wrapped up and in, or the softness in the flow. And it makes sense that if over time we're chronically activated and we don't have the time and space to restore and release and recover, that the body's going to be wrapped up and energy is not going to be able to flow. That life force energy, that oasis of, that oasis in the desert won't be able to be expressed because it's tightened up. Your body hasn't had the ability to release and to feel safe. So when you're triggered and you hold on to that trigger and you keep it in the head and you don't help the body to soften and to relax, that will accumulate over time to being a hard, rigid body. And if you're someone who has a feminine essence, that won't feel like your body. You'll start to feel disconnected from it, like it's not expressing your soul or your spirit. Are any questions coming up, you guys? Any thoughts? This is where, for the hardens and braces, we're going to talk about this. We're going to touch in on it in the Lighten Up course. But my Soften, Nervous System of a Goddess Soften course is going to be incredible for that because there's going to be more education about sympathetic, parasympathetic response and how to move out of a state of survival and fight or flight and into one of rest and digest. It also addresses triggers. Lighten Up will touch on these things, but it's going to go a step further into addressing emotions and addressing stagnation in the body and clearing and having forgiveness. Sympathetic response also creates a forward linear movement. And forward linear movement is very masculine because it's getting something done. It's setting a goal and reaching that goal. It is reaching the tree to run away from the mountain lion. It's running after the deer to, hunt the deer for food. There's examples too in the wild where the animal will sniff out water and have a sympathetic response and then go towards that water. So it brings us to the things that we need. So if we're chronically in sympathetic response, if we're chronically being triggered and we don't have the parasympathetic expression, then we will, by nature, be in a linear movement. And I've been playing around with this from walking. Like, I'm like, am I walking like hyper linear? Like when I go to the grocery store, I have my list and I'm checking off the list and I'm going to do the thing, or am I meandering? And just yesterday, I was at the store with my baby. I like to bring him to the grocery store. I love going grocery shopping. And I like to take him on errands because he's really curious about things. And for me, it's really fun to watch him take everything in, take everyone in. And I was just wearing him and we were just meandering through the aisles. And one of the, store workers asked if I needed help finding anything. And I said, no, I'm just meandering. And I was so in my feminine because I wasn't going to get a thing. I was just being in the moment with my baby, taking everything in, enjoying the environment. See how that's different? If we're chronically in a state of to-do lists and setting goals and reaching those goals and checking things off for the day, we're chronically living in the future and strategy. And over time, that's going to create a body that moves forward in a linear way and that becomes less spirally and less soft, um, and more masculine. And this isn't bad. If you don't mind having masculine energy, this is great. Be more in that sympathetic response. I think in general, male bodies are more built for that, and female bodies, just with our hormones, are more not in general. But if you're someone who likes to express masculine energy in your body, these are like being in that sympathetic response will feel at home to you. We all need parasympathetic rest and digest, every single person. But if you're someone with more of a feminine core, to be more in that state will feel more at home for you. I love this so much. I feel like maybe I've held my stomach in for years. So that would not be relaxing. So I've been holding on. Honestly, a lot of women do that. They kind of pull their stomach in. There's So relaxing your stomach is so nourishing. We can all just rub our bellies right now and just rest the stomach and breathe into the stomach. And then there's also energy locks that you can play around with that are taught in a lot of yoga practices where you pull up on the root. So you pull up on your pelvic floor and then you pull the lower navel, the space below the navel, back towards your spine and up. And this can lock energy in and actually be really good for core stabilization, but it's got a different energy than pulling your stomach in and sucking it in. Think of a belly dancer. Belly dancers, they have really, really relaxed, soft bellies, and they can move them in fluid form. It's so feminine. I love grocery shopping too. I feel like I get lost in time. Oh my gosh. I don't know. It's something about like foraging, like I'm going to get the food for the family. I love it so much. I didn't used to like it as much, but I really like it now. So we addressed the nervous system portion of this video. And if you have any questions, feel free to ask. I want to move on to the holding of emotions because that's a big part of triggers. And I want to say too, I feel like I'm talking about chronic. So triggers are these small things that happen over time, like throughout the day. Someone cuts you off on traffic, someone's rear-ending you, you get an email that you don't like, you have a deadline, someone says something to you that bugs you, someone bumped into you, your ex called you, whatever it is. It's when your body starts to become activated. So you notice that activation and then you say, is this worth it? Like, does this warrant me losing feminine radiance? Ask yourself, like, it's not worth it, my loves. It's not. Sometimes the situations warrant that response, but most of the time it doesn't. It's not worth your vital life force. Letting it go is really important. You can do that by bringing your energy back into your body, noticing the different sensations that are happening, and try to do something different with your body. It's not worth it. I will say too that sometimes triggers get stuck in the head. So we can release the same biological cascade of stress hormones in our body by thinking about a situation that set us off. So if we had a really triggering conversation in the heat of the moment, we're having that activation, we're getting triggered, and then we think about the thing, same thing happens. You are draining your life force energy by ruminating thoughts. It's not worth it. It's not. It's completely causing brittleness and tension and activation, not to mention the facial expressions that we carry, like the furrowing of the brow, the clenching of the jaw. That's one thing too. I feel like if people are aging in dullness and brittleness, that they're carrying these facial expressions that hold resentment and irritation. So let's talk a little bit about emotions. So things like holding on to past trauma, and trauma can be stored in the body in ways that we don't even know. Like we can have conscious memories that are traumatic, but often trauma lives in the subconscious. Often trauma is created in the years from like 0 to 7 when our brainwave frequency is mostly in a lower state. So we don't have a discerning mind. We can't distinguish between right or wrong. We take in everything as truth. And a lot of trauma can be wired into the body in utero and then even passed down ancestrally. So a lot of what we can hold in our bodies might not even be ours. It might have been way out of our hands. So having great compassion for yourself and saying, I'm this spirit, I'm this consciousness in this body, and this body's been given to me in this lifetime, and I'm going to do my best with it. Right. And then getting the support and the help that you need to move through the trauma. Again, I'm going to shout out EMDR. I'm going to shout out somatic experiencing, any sort of healing practitioner that you trust to do ancestral lineage work. So powerful. But working with that trauma that's always resonating in the body that might be creating a chronic state of activation can be so helpful. Holding on to old stories. So you can replay the stories and really identify with them, or you can say, you know what, this is a part of my system and this is what I experienced, but it's not mine. I'm not going to replay it. I'm not going to identify with it. I'm going to embrace it as a part of my human experience and even share it when I feel ready to share it with others to connect and to resonate. But this isn't me. I'm not resonating with it. And then holding on to resentment. I'm going to grab my book. I brought this out before during lives, but this book, Letting Go, Dr. David Hawkins wrote Power versus Force. And he codes different emotions to different attractor patterns around the body through kinesiology. So when someone's experiencing an emotion, they have a certain strength in their muscle tone. And then that resonance of that emotion lives in something called an attractor field around the body. It's the pattern. So the scale of emotions, the lowest emotion, for example, is guilt, which codes at 30, and it goes up and up and up. So fear would be at 100. It has a bit more energy to it than guilt. So after that, you go into anger, which codes at 150, which has more energy to it than fear. My point is, if you are chronically in a state of, let's say, fear, so that's your attractor pattern around your body, and you start to identify with fear and feel fear all the time, and you start to attract situations that warrant fear around you, and that's what you're seeing. And it becomes more and more ingrained in your system throughout time and asks for the activation of the sympathetic response. So it's important to know what emotions you're holding on to. And specifically, I think in terms of forgiveness, I'm actually going to look at the definition of forgiveness right now because I feel like it's a word that's thrown around a lot. Let's see, forgive. To give up resentment against or stop wanting to punish someone for an offense or fault. To relent in being angry or in wishing to exact punishment for. To absolve from payment of. To give up resentment against. Resentment, indignation or ill will stemming from a feeling of having been wronged or offended. So we are wronged in life, like that happens. But when that's held in the body and that's carried with us and that accumulates, it starts to wear on the body as heaviness. And when you're triggered by someone, they can hit upon that memory that you're holding, if that makes sense. So if someone says something that irritates you, then you could have a response based off of an experience that you've had that reminds you of that thing. So it's best to just clear and forgive. I know, easier said than done. We're going to address this in the Lighten Up course. But the antidotes to these elements would be forgiveness, really releasing resentment, releasing ill will towards someone, cleansing the palate, if you will, and bringing great presence. So if you're really identified with old stories, bring as much presence as you can to this moment in time and who you are now. Each of us is so fresh right now. We're brand new. There's only this moment. There's not the past. If you're living in the past and you have that burden and that resentment, or you're hyper focused on the future, you're not bringing your energy into the now. And feminine energy is vibrancy, that oasis in the middle of the desert. So call your energy back. Bring it back now. Stop identifying and replaying stories in your mind, past relationships, past experiences. Come back to this moment. And then another antidote is innocence and freshness. I love to bring in the archetype of a young girl or young child and how fresh they are in relationship to the world. They're not carrying resentment yet. They are experiencing, they're fully present. Everything's new to them. They're awake and alive in this moment. Triggers? I mean, I'm thinking my little one, he gets triggered if he doesn't have his food. But it's not, these triggers aren't caused by the accumulation of experience and past burden, which create the sympathetic response in the body. These triggers are very in the moment. So it's okay to be triggered, but does the trigger meet the situation? That's the big takeaway here. For my baby, when he's triggered and he wants milk, it warrants because that's his way to communicate. I'm going to cry. I'm going to evoke a stress response to mobilize my mama or my papa to get me some milk. And then he gets his milk until he can speak. That's how it is. So that's his way of letting us know what's going on. And then he lets it go. He doesn't hold a resentment that we took too long to get the milk. But as adults, we start to bring in like our thoughts and our ability to have memory, and we store things and we identify certain personality traits, and all this stuff gets built up and we get just so dense and so heavy. And then when someone triggers us, it's not just in the moment, it like carries with it all this weight and all this story. And really ask yourself, is it worth it? Is it worth my vital life force? And oftentimes it's not. So that's what I wanted to share today. And unless you all have questions, I will close this session, but I'll give it a few moments because I know we're lagged. And remember that I do have a brand new option to become a member to this channel. You can hit the join at the bottom left corner of the video, and you'll get the option to have two tiers. The first tier would be just basically to support the channel. You get a member badge and you get to be called out in the chats and things like that. And the second would be access to monthly embodiment practices to help soothe the nervous system, evoke feminine energy. You would get access to the live streams, and I'll do Q&As at the end, and as well as the replays and the recordings. So I'm very excited about that. My channel was just recently monetized, so it's very exciting for me. And I thank you all so much for being here and contributing and sharing and supporting this channel, giving me likes and comments and all these things. It really lets me know that I'm doing a good job and that you want to hear what I'm saying. So thank you for doing that. I think that's everything. Thank you, Amber. This is so powerful. We need this knowledge. I'm so glad. I want to share more about nervous system stuff. I definitely do. That is on my list, is to continue to share science. And I like to share science in a way that's feminine. I think a lot of the sharing of science these days is from a very masculine perspective. Again, not bad, but for those of us who have more of a feminine essence being, it can be kind of a snoozer, can be kind of boring or dry or like my eyes glaze over. So it's on my list this year to find a way to take in that information and then infuse it towards all of you in a way that's more delicious and scrumptious and applicable. I really call my work applied neuroscience. It's like taking it out of the textbook and like placing it in the body, because we have nervous systems, every single one of us, and it influences how we operate. So, okay. Well, I hope to see you all in the Lighten Up course. Registration, the cart will be open all throughout February, but again, early bird pricing ends at the end of this weekend. Also check out my courses, Nervous System of a Goddess, levels 1, levels 2, as well as the Yin Yoga program, and use code OVERFLOW for 50% off through February 4th through 2424. And I hope you all have such a beautiful weekend or rest of your day or evening whenever you're listening to this. Bye.